tiny glass beads, crafted in the Roman Empire, ended up adorning someone in 5th century Japan, a journey of over 5,000 miles. Imagine uncovering traces of vanilla and nutmeg, spices from Southeast Asia, inside ancient Israelite altars from nearly 3,000 years ago. Scientists discovered fragments of Chinese silk, not along the famous Silk Road, but in a German tomb dating back to the 6th century BCE, hundreds of years before we thought such trade existed. A small bronze Buddha statue, originating from northwest India, was found carefully buried in a Viking-era settlement on Helgel Island in Sweden. These aren't movie plots. They're real discoveries pulling back the curtain on how connected our ancient ancestors truly were. Number 10. Uluburun Shipwreck, a Bronze Age floating mark. Picture this. It's the late Bronze Age, around 1300 BCE. A majestic ship, laden with treasures from across the known world, is sailing off the coast of modern-day Turkey. Then, disaster strikes. The ship sinks, taking its precious cargo to the seabed, where it would lie hidden for over 3 millennia. Fast forward to 1982, when sponge divers stumbled upon this incredible time capsule near Uluburun. What they found and what archaeologists have painstakingly excavated and studied since is nothing short of a snapshot of vibrant international trade. The Uluburun shipwreck wasn't just carrying a few pots from a neighboring town. This was a massive haul. We're talking 10 tons of copper ingots, likely from Cyprus, the primary source of copper in the Mediterranean at the time. Then there was another ton of tin ingots. Copper and tin are the key ingredients for bronze, the metal that defined an entire age. The origin of this tin is still a bit of a puzzle, with possibilities ranging from Afghanistan to perhaps even Cornwall in Britain, highlighting incredibly long-distance supply chains. That's just the heavy stuff. The ship also carried a stunning array of luxury goods. There were beautiful Canaanite amphorae filled with terebinth resin used for incense and perfume, possibly from the Levant. Glass ingots of cobalt blue, turquoise, and lavender, the earliest intact glass ingots known, were also part of the cargo, likely from Egypt or the Near East. Then came the exotica, ebony logs from Nubia, south of Egypt, elephant tusks and hippopotamus teeth, ostrich eggshells probably used as fancy containers. Among the more personal items were gold and silver Canaanite jewelry, Mycenaean pottery from Greece, and even a unique gold scarab bearing the name of the Egyptian queen Nefertiti. Tools and weapons from various cultures, including Italian swords and spearheads, were also found. The ship itself was built of cedar, in a style common in the Levant. The sheer diversity of goods, originating from at least 10 different cultures, Mycenaean, Canaanite, Cypriot, Egyptian, Nubian, Kassite, Assyrian, and possibly even Baltic and Central Asian, is staggering. The ongoing analysis of these artifacts, using new scientific techniques, continues to reveal more about their origins and the complex trade routes they traveled. The Uluburun shipwreck isn't just an old boat. It's a floating marketplace, a testament to a Bronze Age world far more interconnected than we ever imagined. Each packet tells a story of diplomacy, industry, and a thirst for goods from distant lands, challenging our old ideas about the isolation of ancient civilizations. It's a discovery that keeps on giving as researchers continue to unlock its secrets. Number 9. Exotic spices in ancient Judean shrines. When you think of ancient Israelite worship, you might picture animal sacrifices and incense. But what kind of incense? For a long time, scholars relied on biblical texts, which mention frankincense and myrrh, both locally available or sourced from nearby Arabia. Then, in the 1960s, archaeologists excavating the ancient fortress of Tel Arid in the Negev desert, dating back to the Kingdom of Judah, around 9th to early 6th centuries BCE, found 2 limestone altars in the sanctuary. For decades, the dark organic residues on these altars remained a bit of a mystery. Jump to 2020, and a team of Israeli researchers decided to take a fresh look using modern chemical analysis techniques. What they found sent ripples through the world of archaeology and biblical studies. On the smaller altar, they detected kaiganes, suggesting the burning of cannabis. While surprising, cannabis was known to grow in various parts of the ancient world. The larger altar held an even bigger surprise. The residue contained compounds indicative of frankincense, as expected, but mixed with something far more exotic: triterpenes characteristic of boswellia trees, frankincense, and astonishingly, cinnamaldehyde, the primary chemical content in cinnamon, and traces of eugenol found in cloves and nutmeg. Cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg don't grow anywhere near the Levant. Their origins lie thousands of miles away in Southeast Asia, places like Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and the Spice Islands. Finding them on an altar in a remote Judean desert fortress from around 700 BC. Ni is a game changer. It suggests that incredibly long-distance trade routes, possibly maritime ones via the Red Sea and Indian Ocean, were supplying these highly prized spices to the Kingdom of Judah much earlier and more directly than previously thought. This discovery isn't just about adding new items to the list of ancient imports. It paints a picture of Judah as a kingdom with far-reaching connections, capable of acquiring incredibly expensive and rare commodities from the other side of the known world. It implies complex networks of merchants, mariners, and markets stretching across continents. The presence of these spices in a sacred context also hints at their immense cultural and religious value. Team involved emphasized that this analysis provided the first identified evidence of cinnamon in a clear cultic context in ancient Judah. It's a fragrant clue, preserved for nearly 3 millennia, that is rewriting our understanding of ancient economies and the surprising global reach of even relatively small kingdoms. Number 8. Mesoamerican chocolate, far north in Chaco Canyon. Imagine the dry, high desert of what is now New Mexico 1,000 years ago. Here, the Chacoan people built magnificent, great houses, massive stone structures with hundreds of rooms, like Pueblo Bonito. For a long time, the source of their wealth and the purpose of these monumental buildings were debated. We knew they were sophisticated astronomers and engineers, but what fueled their society? Recent discoveries have added a delicious twist. Chocolate? Not just any chocolate, but specifically cacao, the plant from which chocolate is made. Cacao doesn't grow in the arid Southwest. Its native habitat is the humid tropical regions of Mesoamerica, hundreds if not thousands of miles to the south, in places like modern-day Mexico and Central America. Yet researchers starting in the early 2000s and with more definitive findings around 2009 began detecting traces of theobromine, a key alkaloid in cacao, in pottery sherds from Chaco Canyon. These weren't just any pots. They were specific types of cylindrical jars, often beautifully decorated, that seemed designed for special beverages. Using advanced chemical analysis, scientists confirmed the presence of cacao residues in numerous vessels found at Pueblo Bonito and other Chacoan sites, dating between roughly 900 and 1150 CE. This wasn't a one-off find. It appeared to be a relatively consistent import. This discovery was remarkable because it provided concrete evidence of a long-distance trade network connecting the American Southwest with the complex civilizations of Mesoamerica, where cacao was a highly prized commodity, used as currency in rituals, and as a prestigious drink for elite. The journey of these cacao beans from the tropics to the high desert would have been arduous, likely involving many intermediaries and challenging overland routes. The fact that it was being imported in noticeable quantities suggests it held significant social and ritual importance for the Chacoan people. Perhaps it was consumed by elites during ceremonies or used to forge and maintain social and political ties. The discovery also prompts new questions. What were the Chacoans trading in return? Turquoise from the southwest, highly valued in Mesoamerica, is a strong candidate. This chocolate connection is a fantastic example of how new scientific techniques applied to old artifacts can suddenly illuminate previously invisible lines of exchange, revealing a North America that was far more interconnected in pre-Columbian times than we often assume. It shows that luxury goods, even ones requiring extensive travel, found their way to dedicated consumers far from their source. Number 7. Akrotiri's art, hinting at Egyptian saffron trade. On the Greek island of Santorini, anciently known as Thera, lies the remarkably preserved Bronze Age settlement of Akrotiri. Buried under volcanic ash around 1600 BC, like a Minoan, Pompeii, Akrotiri offers an unparalleled window into Aegean life. Its houses are adorned with vibrant frescoes depicting scenes of daily life, nature, and mysterious rituals. One particular set of frescoes, known as the Saffron Gatherers, has long fascinated archaeologists. These paintings show women, and sometimes blue monkeys, carefully picking the stigmas from crocus flowers, the source of saffron. Saffron was, and still is, one of the world's most expensive spices, prized for its color, flavor, and medicinal properties. The Akrotiri frescoes clearly show that saffron cultivation and processing were important activities on Thera. But recent interpretations and comparative studies are suggesting a much wider trade in this precious commodity, potentially linking the Minoan world with powerful Egypt. While direct archaeological evidence of Terran saffron in Egypt is hard to come by, spices don't preserve well. Art historians and archaeologists have pointed to intriguing visual connections. For instance, certain decorative motifs and color palettes found in Egyptian art of the New Kingdom period, roughly contemporary with Akrotiri's final phase, show similarities with Minoan artistic conventions. More specifically, some scholars have proposed that the Minoans, including those from Thera, were exporting saffron to Egypt. The Egyptians were known for their love of perfumes, cosmetics, and medicines, and saffron would have been a highly desirable ingredient. Newer research, published around 2021, has focused on the depiction of these blue monkeys in the saffron gathering scenes. While these monkeys were initially thought to be African green monkeys, some primatologists now suggest they more closely resemble Hanuman langurs from the Indian subcontinent. If this interpretation holds, it could imply even more extensive trade networks than previously imagined, perhaps bringing these monkeys, or knowledge of them, to the Aegean via established Near Eastern trade routes that also connected to Egypt. However, the primary focus remains on the saffron itself. The just discovering aspect here isn't a brand new dig, but rather the evolving interpretation of these stunning frescoes in light of our growing understanding of Bronze Age trade dynamics. The meticulous depiction of saffron processing at Akrotiri, combined with Egypt's known demand for luxury goods and existing trade links with the Aegean, evidenced by Minoan pottery found in Egypt and Egyptian artifacts in Crete, paints a compelling picture. It suggests that this vibrant red-gold spice cultivated on a volcanic island in the Aegean may have been a key export, gracing the courts and temples of pharaohs, part of a sophisticated exchange system that moved high-value, low-bulk goods across the Mediterranean. Number 6. Early Chinese silk in European Iron Age tombs. When we think of Chinese silk reaching Europe, the legendary Silk Road immediately springs to mind, a network of routes that flourished from around the 2nd century BC onwards, connecting east and west. But what if silk was making its way to Europe much, much earlier? Groundbreaking discoveries in Germany are pushing back the timeline for these luxurious connections by centuries. In the 1990s and early 2000s, during excavations of elite Iron Age burials from the Hallstatt Citeriod, roughly 7th to 6th centuries BC in Germany, such as the Homichel burial mound and a princely grave near Stuttgart, archaeologists found something astonishing. One particularly notable find was from the Hopedorf chieftain's grave, dated to around 530 BCE, where silk remnants were identified in the textiles associated with the burial. More recently, in 2013, analysis of finds from the Hunneberg princely grave, also in southern Germany and dating to the 6th century BCE, confirmed the presence of silk threads. What makes these discoveries so electrifying is their age. These tombs predate the commonly accepted start of the formal Silk Road by several hundred years. The silk found was not just any silk. Analysis indicated it was high-quality, cultivated silk, the kind produced in ancient China. At this time, China held a strict monopoly on silk production, its secrets closely guarded. Finding it in the heart of Europe, in the graves of Celtic chieftains, raises a host of fascinating questions about early, long-distance trade. How did this silk travel thousands of miles from China to Central Europe in the 6th century BCE? The exact routes are still a matter of speculation. It likely passed through many intermediaries, perhaps through nomadic groups in Central Asia, gradually making its way westwards. It wouldn't have been a direct China to Germany express delivery, but rather a chain of exchanges. Quantities found are small, suggesting silk was an incredibly rare and precious luxury item, reserved for the highest echelons of society. Its presence in these rich burials boasts the status and far-reaching connections of these Iron Age European elites. These finds are forcing historians and archaeologists to rethink the nature and antiquity of Eurasian trade. While not a full-blown Silk Road in the later sense, these discoveries indicate that threads of connection quite literally existed much earlier than previously documented. The ongoing analysis of textiles from Iron Age sites, using increasingly sophisticated scientific methods, continues to reveal more about these ancient exchanges. It's a testament to the enduring human desire for exotic goods and the surprising capabilities of ancient peoples to acquire them across vast distances long before the great empires formalized these routes. Number 5. Indus Valley beads. Across continents. The Indus Valley civilization, flourishing around 2500 to 1900 BC in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, was one of the world's earliest urban cultures. Known for its well-planned cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, sophisticated drainage systems, and a still undeciphered script, it was also a major center for crafts and trade. Among their most sought-after products were exquisitely crafted beads, particularly those made from carnelian. Carnelian, a reddish-orange variety of chalcedony, was expertly mined, heated to enhance its color, drilled with incredible precision, and polished to a high sheen by Indus artisans. These weren't just simple beads. They came in various shapes and sizes, including long, elegant barrel shapes and intricate etched designs. And these beautiful objects didn't just stay within the Indus Valley. They traveled far and wide, becoming prized possessions in distant lands. For decades, archaeologists have found Indus carnelian beads in Mesopotamia, modern Iraq, in royal tombs at Ur, for instance, showing clear trade links between these two great Bronze Age civilizations. This was a journey of over 1,500 miles, likely involving both land and sea routes. The reach of these beads appears to have been even greater, and new discoveries or re-examinations of older ones keep expanding the map of Indus trade. For example, Indus-style etched carnelian beads have been reported from sites in the Persian Gulf, Central Asia, like Gonur Depi in Turkmenistan, and even as far as the Arabian Peninsula. Some studies have suggested that Indus carnelian beads, or beads made with Indus techniques, might have reached even further, though evidence can sometimes be debated. Key just discovering element here is the ongoing meticulous analysis of bead-making techniques, material sourcing, using geochemical analysis to pinpoint carnelian origins, and the re-evaluation of finds in museum collections that might have been overlooked or misidentified. For instance, recent focus on maritime trade routes highlights how seafaring merchants could have carried these goods. Imagine a carnelian bead, mined and shaped in a Harappan workshop, then traveling by boat down the Indus River, across the Arabian Sea, perhaps up the Persian Gulf to Mesopotamia, or even further east or west through complex intermediary networks. Each bead found in a distant land is a tiny, durable piece of evidence for these ancient connections. It speaks of merchants braving long journeys, of shared aesthetic values across cultures, and of sophisticated economic systems that could move luxury goods over enormous distances. While the Indus script remains unread, these little red stones speak volumes about their global interactions, and each new confirmed find in an unexpected location helps us piece together the vast puzzle of their trade empire. The search continues, with researchers constantly looking for these telltale signs of Indus craftsmanship in archaeological sites across Asia and the Near East. Number 4. Bronze Age tin, the global quest for the secret Incurrenge. The Bronze Age, spanning roughly from 3300 BC to 1200 BCE in many regions, was a godding period in human history. It was defined by the widespread use of bronze, an alloy of copper and, crucially, tin. Bronze was harder and more durable than copper alone, making it ideal for tools, weapons, and art. Copper sources were relatively common, but tin was a different story. Tin is a much rarer metal, and its geological deposits are few and far between. This scarcity made tin a highly valuable commodity in the ancient world, and the quest for it fueled extensive and often mysterious trade networks. For a long time, the exact origins of the tin used by major Bronze Age civilizations, like those in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Aegean, remained a significant puzzle. Ancient texts sometimes mentioned tin sources, but these were often vague or referred to places that are hard to pinpoint today. Archaeologists knew vast quantities of tin were being consumed, but tracing it back to its geological source was a major challenge. This is where modern science has really started to unlock secrets. In recent decades, advances in isotopic and trace element analysis have allowed researchers to fingerprint tin artifacts and compare them to ore samples from potential mining regions. This has led to some fascinating and sometimes surprising revelations about the scale and complexity of the Bronze Age tin trade. For example, tin ingots found in shipwrecks like the Uluburun, see number 10, and at sites across the Mediterranean and Near East have been analyzed. While some tin clearly came from sources in Central Asia like Afghanistan and Tajikistan, which were known historically, other evidence points to more distant suppliers. One of the most intriguing possibilities, supported by growing scientific evidence, is that a significant amount of Bronze Age tin used in the Mediterranean came from as far away as Cornwall in Great Britain and parts of Iberia, Spain, and Portugal. This would imply truly epic sea voyages or very long overland trade chains stretching across Europe. Imagine tin mined in Cornwall being transported down to the English Channel, across to France, and then either overland or by a series of coastal voyages all the way to the Eastern Mediterranean. The just discovering aspect is very much alive here. Each new analysis of a tinbic or ingot can add a piece to the puzzle. Researchers are constantly refining their analytical techniques and expanding their database of ore signatures from different mining regions. The debate continues about the relative importance of various sources, Central Asian, Anatolian, European, at different times and for different civilizations. What is clear is that the demand for tin created a truly international market in the Bronze Age. Connected disparate cultures spurred on exploration and technological innovation in mining and metallurgy, and was likely a major driver of wealth and power. The search for Bronze Age tin sources is like a global detective story, with scientists as the investigators piecing together clues from tiny metal fragments to reveal ancient supply lines that spanned continents. Number 3. Tarim mummies and their Western textiles in China. In the arid Tarim Basin of Tunjiang, northwest China, a series of astonishing discoveries, beginning in the early 20th century and accelerating in the 1970s and 80s, has challenged many assumptions about ancient population movements. Here, in the harsh desert sands, naturally mummified bodies dating from around 2000 BC to 200 CE were unearthed. What made these Tarim mummies so startling were their physical features: fair hair, long noses, and relatively tall stature, which appeared distinctly non-East Asian to many observers. But perhaps even more intriguing were the clothes they were buried in. The textiles found with these mummies, particularly from sites like Cherson and Lulan, are exceptionally well preserved due to the dry climate, and they tell a fascinating story. Many of the garments are made of wool, dyed in vibrant colors, and woven into complex patterns, including twills and plaids that look strikingly similar to patterns found in ancient Celtic Europe. One of the most famous examples is the Cherson man, dating to around 1000 BCE, who was buried wearing a tunic and leggings of reddish-purple wool woven in a tartan-like plaid. The discovery of these Western-looking textiles, thousands of miles east of Europe, in a region that would later become a crucial part of the Silk Road, opened up a world of questions. Who were these people? Where did they come from? And how did these textile technologies and styles arrive in the Tarim Basin? Genetic studies on the mummies have yielded complex results, suggesting a mix of ancestries, with some West Eurasian components being prominent in the earlier individuals. This points to populations migrating into the Tarim Basin from the West during the Bronze Age. The just discovering aspect here is ongoing. While the mummies themselves are not new finds, the detailed analysis of their textiles, the dyes used, the weaving techniques, and the continuous refinement of genetic studies are constantly adding new layers to our understanding. For example, detailed studies of the wool fibers have sometimes indicated the presence of sheep breeds more common in the West. The weaving techniques themselves, such as the use of diagonal twill, were not common in China at that early period, but were well established further west. These mummies and their clothing don't necessarily mean there was direct trade between, say, ancient Scotland and the Tarim Basin. Instead, they suggest movements of people and cultural technologies across the vast Eurasian steppes. These people likely brought their weaving skills and stylistic preferences with them. Later, as the Silk Road developed, the Tarim Basin became a melting pot, a crucial conduit for goods and ideas traveling in both directions. The presence of these early Western textiles provides a fascinating prologue to the Silk Road story, hinting at even earlier waves of East-West interaction and the transmission of material culture across what many once considered insurmountable distances. They are a vibrant, tangible link to a surprisingly mobile Bronze Age world. Number 2. Swedish Vikings and Indian Buddhas. When you think of Vikings, you probably picture fierce warriors raiding coastal monasteries in Western Europe, or intrepid explorers sailing to Iceland, Greenland, and North America. The Vikings were also prolific traders, and their networks stretched much further east than many realize, deep into Russia towards the Byzantine Empire, and even touching the edges of the Islamic and Asian worlds. One of the most remarkable pieces of evidence for this far eastern reach was unearthed on the small Swedish island of Helgö. Helgo, located in Lake Mälaren, not far from modern Stockholm, was a significant trading and craft center during the Viking Age from roughly the 6th to the 11th centuries CE. Excavations there, particularly in the mid-20th century, revealed workshops for bronze casting, jewelry making, and other crafts, along with a wealth of imported goods. Among these finds, one object stands out for its exotic origin and the incredible journey it must have undertaken: a small, bronze Buddha statuette. The Helgo Buddha is about 8.5 centimeters, around 3.3 inches, tall and depicts a seated Buddha figure in a meditative pose, with characteristic features like elongated earlobes and a serene expression. Stylistic analysis suggests it was made in the Kashmir region or Swat Valley, modern-day northern Pakistan, India, around the 6th or 7th century CE. How on earth did a Buddhist religious icon from the foothills of the Himalayas end up in a Viking settlement in Sweden hundreds of years later and thousands of miles away? This is where the story gets truly fascinating. The Vikings, particularly those from Sweden, often called Varangians, established extensive river trade routes through Eastern Europe, known as the route from the Varangians to the Greeks, leading to Constantinople, Byzantine, to the Caspian Sea, and the Islamic Caliphate. Through these networks, they traded furs, amber, slaves, and walrus ivory for silver coins, dirhams, from the Arab world, Byzantine silks, and other exotic goods. It's highly unlikely a Viking directly traveled to Kashmir to pick up this Buddha. Instead, the statuette was probably passed along a series of trade networks. It might have traveled from India through Persia and into the Islamic world, then northwards along the Volga trade route, eventually being acquired by a Viking trader, perhaps in exchange for furs or other northern commodities. It could have been valued not for its religious meaning, which the Vikings would likely not have understood, but as an exotic curio, a piece of finely crafted metalwork, or even as scrap metal to be melted down, though its careful burial suggests it was kept intact. The just discovering aspect isn't that the Buddha itself is a new find, it was found decades ago, but the ongoing appreciation of what it signifies in the broader context of Viking Eastern connections. It's a tangible piece of evidence, alongside Arab silver coins and carnelian beads from India, also found in Viking hoards, that paints a picture of a surprisingly globalized early medieval world. The Helgo Buddha is a silent testament to the vast distances goods, and perhaps even faint echoes of distant cultures, could travel along these ancient superhighways of trade. Number 1. Roman glass in Japanese tombs. Imagine the Roman Empire at its height, a powerhouse stretching across the Mediterranean, North Africa, and into Europe. Now picture ancient Japan during its Kofun period, roughly 3rd to 7th century CE, a time of powerful clans, giant burial mounds, Kofun, and a distinct cultural identity, seemingly a world away. For a long time, the idea of any significant link between these two distant realms would have seemed far-fetched. But archaeology has a way of surprising us. In recent years, several discoveries have dramatically challenged this notion of isolation. One of the most striking examples comes from the Utsukushi burial mounds in Nagaoka, near Kyoto, Japan. Excavations here, notably around 2012 to 2013, uncovered tiny glass beads, about 5 millimeters in diameter. These weren't just any beads. Scientific analysis, including X-ray fluorescence, revealed that some of these beads were made of natron glass, a type of glass whose production method was characteristic of the Roman Empire and its workshops, particularly in Egypt and the Levant. Furthermore, some beads showed traces of antimony, used as a decolorizing agent in Roman glassmaking. These beads were dated to between the 1st and 4th centuries CE. They were found in a context dating to the 5th century CE, suggesting they were treasured heirlooms. This wasn't an isolated incident. Kofun burial mound in Wakayama, and even as far north as Hokkaido. While some glass production did exist in Asia, the specific chemical composition of these particular beads strongly point to a Roman or Roman-influenced origin. So, how did these tiny pieces of Roman craftsmanship travel over 5,000 miles, or much more depending on the route, to end up in the tombs of Japanese elites? The most plausible explanation is not direct trade between Rome and Japan, which is highly unlikely. Instead, these beads were likely passed along a vast network of interconnected trade routes, the most famous of which is the Silk Road, which extended across Central Asia, linking China with the West. Roman goods, including glassware, coins, and textiles, are known to have reached Han Dynasty China. From China, these precious items could then have trickled further east through trade or diplomatic exchanges with the Korean Peninsula and ultimately to Japan. Another possibility is maritime routes that connected Southeast Asia, China, Korea, and Japan. The just discovering element is twofold. The relatively recent nature of some of these specific finds and analyses, and the growing realization of just how far certain Roman luxury items penetrated into Asia. Each discovery of a Roman bead in a Japanese tomb adds another data point, reinforcing the idea of a transcontinental exchange network that was far more extensive than previously imagined. These small, unassuming glass beads are powerful symbols of ancient globalization. They demonstrate that even in antiquity, desirable goods could traverse immense geographical and cultural divides connecting worlds that seemed utterly separate, one trade at a time, until they finally rested with someone who valued them enough to take them to the afterlife in ancient Japan.